Hello everybody, welcome to another Paumiko Q&A. You guys know what these are. These are the Q&As from questions from the Inner Circle, the Paumiko Dog Training Inner Circle, from people who are following the Paumiko Dog Guide, our general dog training video series. We basically filmed everything I did to train my own dog. You can check that out at paumikodogtraining.com. You can check out Paumiko Dog Training on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Let's get into the Q&A. We've got two here today. Now, this first one brings up some interesting points. Let me just get my sound right here. I'm a bit loud in my own ears. Timia asks, my dog listens when we are training at home in our backyard, but when we walk out our gate and down the footpath, she pulls hard on the leash and won't listen to any commands. I've tried treat training, and that doesn't work when we aren't at home. She's better at the park, but I don't know what to do about everything else. My dog is 8 months old. So I've got some notes on this. First, I've put train in the park. So she says when we walk out our gate and down the footpath, she pulls hard on the leash. And then later on, she says she's better at the park. So first thing, anytime you run into a problem in training like that, one of our principles is taking a step back. So if we're moving through training or we're moving through basically day-to-day life with our pup or dog, and we run into something exactly like this, like, hey, I'm going to, instead of driving to the park, I'm going to walk straight out the front gate and down the footpath today. And you do that for the first time and the dog starts pulling, or you do it, the dog's all right the first time, and then third, fourth, fifth time, it slowly builds up until the dog's pulling more and more on the leash. Then I need to take a step back in training. And the first thing to do is stop doing the thing where the problem's arising until you come up with a plan. And usually the first workaround to things like that, and this is a classic example of this, is the dog's pulling on the leash on the footpath, much better at the park. So you stop walking the dog on the footpath, you drive it to the park and you work with it there. It's a relatively common one too, because on the footpath, there's so many smells and distractions and things going on. And if you're walking along a footpath where first of all, everyone else has been walking there, then you've got the road to your left and houses to your right. And at every house, there's new smells. There's cats everywhere all through town every night. And every second, third, fourth, fifth house, whatever it is, has a dog. And you're coming up on them right next to you, and dogs often come running up to the fence to bark at you and run up and down, and there's all this extreme energy, all these distractions just coming a million miles an hour. And if you don't have a very, very good foundation of control, attentiveness, leash work, all of that sort of stuff that you set up in a low distraction environment, then walking up the footpath is really putting a young dog without a lot of those skills set up to a pretty high level. Taking a young dog on a footpath like that is really throwing them in the deep end and setting them up to fail. And if they start pulling on the leash and you keep continuing to try it again, you're ingraining bad habits. So again, this is one of our principles, taking steps back, taking a step back in training when you run into problems. Classic example of it, get away from that footpath, drive your dog to the park. Because the thing with the park, and this is huge, okay, this is huge, is space. Space is big. Getting out into an open space so the dog can see 360 degrees around it. There'll always be people or other dogs or different distractions at the park, but at least it's not that situation of the footpath where you're walking along the front of everyone's section or backyard or house or whatever you want to call it. And dogs are just like, everyone will know this scenario. It happens all the time around Papamoa here, walking the dogs on the footpath, running them on the e-bike, and it'll even be a fence with trees along it, and or a hedge or a garden, and that dog's got one little gap. The dog that lives in that household has a little gap, and it's like the game that the dog plays all day, every day, and there's a gap right down one end, and the dog sits up on the deck or veranda or whatever, or wherever it sits in the section, and it sees a dog coming, and they sit back quietly and wait, and then right when you and your dog's about to walk right past that gap, they come flying up and barking. It can be super intense and instant, and you're sort of getting ambushed. Whereas a thing out in a big open space like a park or a sports ground or something like that, and the bigger the better. We're really lucky here. We've got a couple of huge, massive open areas, and you can see everything around you. But more importantly, your dog can see everything around it. So all of a sudden it becomes much easier for the dog to relax, focus on you. It knows it's not going to get ambushed or pounced at from the side. So that's a huge one. That's my first bit of advice here, is avoid the footpath for a while, work at the park, and the other thing about the park is perfect, is that you still will have distractions come up, but you need to have that time and space of low distraction to work on all the things that are in the Paumiko Dog Guide with all the leash work and get that all tidy. And the stop drill that we do, and getting the eye contact off the release, and that all of that is super smooth. And we'll talk about that further in a moment here. All of that stuff's super, super important. It is, when we do that, we are teaching a heel and a turn and a stop and a recall and a sit and a stay. And then even later on, we do that retrieve work. We are working on those skills, but what is actually more important than the actual action of what we're doing, of the dog sitting and the dog coming and in behind and retrieving the ball and bringing it back? What is even more important than that is the relationship and the bond and the rapport and the dialogue that we're building with our dog there. The dialogue, that word is so important. A dialogue is where I'm talking to you, you're understanding, you're talking back, and we are understanding each other, and we have an understanding and conversation, a two-way conversation where we're both giving each other feedback and we're both understanding it and reacting to it. And then the bond and the relationship and the respect is exactly that, and we respect each other, and I want to know what you want to get out of whatever situation we're in, and I want you to be happy and comfortable with that, and I want the same in return. It's a two-way street thing where it works positively for both of us. That's what you need with your dog. And I want to read this. This is a reply that I gave to Timia straight away. Quite often if someone asks a question in the Paumiko Inner Circle, and I know I'm not doing these video Q&As for a week or so, I'll give written answers straight away. And I said to Timia, "Hi Timia, have you watched the stuff on leash work in the remedial training section of the Paumiko Dog Guide?" And she hadn't. She was going to go forward and watch that, because there's a huge amount on all of the stuff and distraction and getting out into space, but more importantly, some really good key techniques and sort of philosophies and ideas on how to get a dog that's super distracted, super pulling on the leash, to calm down and start taking notice of the leash and walk at a heel and walk with the slack leash and all that sort of stuff. So I said that first. But this is huge, like huge. And often that's why there's a bit of written stuff where I'm basically reading off a script in the Paumiko Dog Guide. Same in the Deer Dog Training Blueprint, because I can often articulate myself better in writing than I can with the spoken word. And this is probably one of the best ways that I've articulated this idea, I think, in a short block of words. So I said to Timmy, watch the stuff on leash work in the remedial training section. Also, if you're using treats in basic training at home, which she said she was doing, that can be a huge issue, as the dog is just doing it for the treats, not you. And you're not actually building a proper bond or rapport with the dog. So when real situations and distractions arise that are more important to the dog at the time than food or treats, you have nothing to fall back on. It's huge. That's why we don't use treats and food as a training tool. We use basic training to build a real bond and rapport with the dog. Using treats and food can negate that and basically destroy training. It's a biggie. And it's a biggie. It is huge. Okay, huge. Treat training can negate all of that. Treat training gives you a very fast, very visible result in the moment, and the dog sitting and coming in and sitting all nice and looking up at you and all of that. In my opinion, treat training and all of that stuff is basically trying to mimic that same thing that real dog training gets without treats. And the two couldn't be any different. Miko does the exact same thing. If I call Miko, come, she comes zipping in, plants her bum and looks down at me just stoked as, waiting, eye contact. And I've never treat trained her. And I can't stress enough the difference in relationship and the difference in what's actually going on under the surface between a dog that does that, that's never been treat trained, and a dog that does that because it's been treat trained. The treat is actually putting something in between the dog actually doing that for me. It's all backwards. That's why I don't treat train. And I don't necessarily go out of my way to say don't treat train, never do it, harping on about it. I've done a little bit of that off and on in the past, and it's ruffled feathers in the past. So I don't go out of my way to say don't treat train. Treat training's no good because so many people do it. It's basically the main tool for a huge majority of mainstream dog training today, if not almost all of it. And now it's all based on incorrect science. It used to be said that dogs have a higher emotional response to food, and food gets the response and all of that. And a lot of that goes back to that scientist Pavlov and the Pavlovian effect, where he was ringing a bell and feeding a dog, and ring the bell and feed the dog, and ring the bell and feed the dog, and eventually you ring the bell and the dog's waiting to get fed. It has nothing to do with a dog wanting to listen to you. That's just a dog trying to get some food. And then again, as I've written here, when real situations and distractions arise that are more important to the dog at the time than food or treats, you have nothing to fall back on. It's huge. And there's new science now. I think this study was done in 2016. If you Google dogs having a stronger emotional response to praise over food, it'll come up with it. 2016. The study came out. And it confirmed what a lot of people have known about dog training for a long time. There's always been people that don't like treat training and don't do it and get extremely good results. And as treat training in the modern era of dog training has really just gone from 0 to 100, bump the mic, from 0 to 100 like crazy, which is what it's done. And it's not that long. You know, you're only talking 20 years to 10 years, especially in the last 10 years, it's just gone crazy. Even in the last 10 years, and right up to the modern day, and it's actually doing a bit of an inversion, whereas as treat training and the modern style of dog training has become so mainstream and popularized, there is now more and more trainers that don't treat train, that have a full-time job fixing dogs that have been treat trained and having to start all over again without treats to fix all the problems and get some real results happening. While I'm talking about this, it's very important to mention the fact that you can train a dog very well with treats. But just because you use treats doesn't mean you're going to get a great result. And in my experience, more often than not, so often, people that are new to dog training and are getting this information on how to treat train their dog and are getting shown how to do it, often by people that aren't hugely experienced themselves in training dogs for real world situations. What the treat training does is give them a false sense of security, and it's just a huge big distraction away from what you really need to be doing. And that's what I've found. And so coming back to what I was saying earlier, I said about how important that basic work of the way we train a stop and a go and a turn and range and heel and a recall and a retrieve, and how part of that is teaching those actions, because those are all super practical, and I would actually argue 100% necessary things that we need with our dog. We need to be able to tell them to stop. They might be about to run across a road, or there might be an aggressive looking dog out there, or there might be someone that's saying that your dog is running towards or moving towards, and their body language is showing you that, hey, I don't want your dog coming over here at the moment. There's so many. You need to be able to stop your dog, call your dog back, recall it, ask it to sit and have it stay there, and you need to be able to put on a leash and walk it on a leash without pulling on the leash. Okay, these are all, you need them. And as important as all of those basic skills are, I would almost argue that the bond and relationship that we build through teaching those basic skills are even more important than the skills themselves. And training the stop, go, come, turn, heel, retrieve, recall, those are those are the exercises, those are sort of the conduits through which we build that bond and rapport. And using treats cuts all that off at the pass. And all of it when you get that instant sit with a treat, you've just lost all that opportunity to step in, step out. No, sit down. Good dog. Get its eye contact. Release it. Retrieve. Come. Go. Miko, come. She's not coming. Nah, Miko, come. Good girl. She's coming in. Instead of just click, treat, and the dog's doing it like that. But what's actually happening between you and the dog, not the dog doing it for the treat. I could go on forever. I'm not going to keep ranting and rambling about that, but it's hugely important. And again, you can get a very, very good result with treats, but you have to do it with an understanding of all of this other stuff. You can, and there's those other issues that I just said. I actually think it's far better to do it the slower way, and you end up with this so much better solid foundation underneath all of that. And one other idea I'll leave you with here on this subject is, and I think it's a great saying, and it sort of encapsulates a lot of this stuff. By the time, this is a quote, this isn't something I made up. By the time you understand how to use treats properly, you realize you don't need them anymore. That's the quote, and I'll add to that. And you actually realize that you're better off without them. So Timia, we've talked. Timia replied she was going to watch some other stuff. She read my comment about the treats. That's interesting. So she's moving on. She's good to go as far as I know. Timia, if you have any more questions or comments, let us know how you're going. I hope it's all going well. Sebastian. Hi, Paul. My pup is going really well with crate training, and command of disapproval works very well. But when it comes to being free about the house, she wants to pick up stuff or wants to play with things she's not allowed. I use a command of disapproval, but it doesn't faze her. Is there anything else I can do? So again, here I replied back to Sebastian straight away. So basically, he's making good progress with some things. Crate training is going well. He's using a little bit of pressure. We use, in the Paumiko Dog Guide and all my training, we use pressure and praise. We're not 100% positive. We're definitely not 100% negative. And we definitely don't do the thing where you reward the good stuff and ignore the bad stuff. We reward the good stuff. But if our dog's doing something that we don't want them to do, we let them know with pressure. So if a pup is barking or whining in the crate and they're just going and going and going, and we can go, hey, and they'll snap out of it and look up, and we break that behavior. And then they're quiet for a moment. And then they start again, barking, whining, hey. And they're quiet for a while. Then they go to sleep. Then we go over once they've been asleep for a while, and we open the crate, let them out, give them a pat, good pup. And they learn very, very quickly. So it's a big for people that are listening that haven't followed our series. Those little brief applications of pressure can just make it so much easier on the pup. Teach them how to be calm and relaxed, and help us move through training so much faster. We're actually helping the pup out, letting it know, hey, you don't need to do that. Just chill and relax and sleep. And that same idea goes with lots of other things. But Sebastian goes on to say that when it comes to being free about the house, she wants to pick stuff up or wants to play with things she's not allowed. I use a command of disapproval, but it doesn't faze her. Anything else you could do. And I don't actually have my comment in the notes, but I basically said if you're in that position with the pup or dog, it comes back to what we said earlier about taking steps back in training. Another one of our principles is freedom and responsibility. We slowly give a pup or dog more freedom and responsibility as they are becoming ready to deal with it. And if we're in a position where our pup's running free around the house when they're 10 weeks old and they're chewing shoes and doing whatever they're doing, picking stuff up and play with things when she's not allowed, and you're using the command of disapproval and it doesn't work, you're giving that pup or dog too much freedom and responsibility. It's not quite ready for it yet. And when you do that, you're setting up training for success is another principle. When you put a pup or dog in those situations, you're setting them up to fail. And if you're giving commands of disapproval or commands over and over and the pup isn't listening, this is another principle. Now you're exposing weakness. Every time you give a pup or a dog a command that it has the opportunity not to listen to, you're teaching it that it doesn't have to listen to you. And that's very destructive. So it's just very important. And basically what I said here was if your pup's still doing those types of things, it's getting really out of hand, it's not quite ready for it, and it either needs to be in the crate or under direct supervision. And that's where it's so important to get out with your pup in that low distraction environment with a long line on and spend that time exercising your pup in a constructive way where you're building that bond and rapport and you're working on all those life skills that we need in a constructive way, and you're not building those negative patterns of chewing and not listening and doing all of those things. And if you do that, if you avoid those situations where you're setting a pup up to fail, if you don't give them freedom and responsibility that they're not ready for, which is setting them up to fail, and you're avoiding all the bad stuff and you're doing all the good constructive stuff, you quickly arrive at the point where your pup or dog is ready for more freedom and responsibility. And now they are ready to cruise around the house and chill, and they'll start listening. And with a young pup, it's usually a matter of a few weeks. However, if you keep setting your pup up to fail, you keep giving it too much freedom and responsibility that it's not ready for, and you don't do quite enough constructive stuff to build those skills, you quickly arrive at the point where you can't do anything with your pup or dog, and it's just a freaking nightmare. So all of this stuff, any pressure, any restriction of freedom and responsibility early on, and our training is actually all designed to give a pup or dog the most freedom and fun and best lifestyle as soon as possible. And it's all designed to avoid those issues that can screw up a dog's lifestyle forever, where it's got bad habits, so now it can't be let off the leash at the park, or it can't be free around the house, or you can't turn your back and you're always worried about what your dog's doing next. It's all about giving your dog the best life possible as soon as possible with the lowest chance of serious issues. So that's it, guys. I feel like this is a little bit of a serious one, but there was a lot of really important stuff there. Remember, if you want to learn more about the Paumiko Dog Guide and Paumiko Dog Training, you can go to paumikodogtraining.com. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can send us a message there, ask us any questions, send us an email. We're generally pretty quick and good with all that sort of stuff. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later.